Okay, hi Catherine, how are you?
I'm doing well. Douglas, how are you?
Doing very well, thank you. Thank you for coming on
Good.
our video show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So let's see, you're an author, yeah? How many books have you
Yeah.
written to date?
Well, under my own name, I have written 8 books and one novella. And I also ghostwrite. So that question is kind of a two-parter, but I am about to finish my, I guess, 72nd book at the end of this week for counting them all together.
72nd book. Okay, and you have
Yeah.
72, that's a tongue twister. 72
Good.
books published or not all published?
Most of them are published. Most of them are not under my name, so they are published under someone else's name with other publishers and authors. Um, but I do write a lot. I have 8 under my name that are published. Yes.
Okay. I gotta ask you, what is that thing on the wall behind you? It looks almost like a
The
giant snake or something. What is
the
that?
long dangly.
The long dangly
It
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the long dangly thing right there. That's
Yeah.
just a decoration. It has a little rune bead on the bottom, and it's just something I thought was cool. It's not a snake.
What's
It's a wrapped with
what
is it
is it?
thread?
What is its origin?
Oh, well, I found it looking through random things on Etsy, and I thought it was very cool. But the rune on it, and I'm going to butcher the way it's said, so I'm not even going to try. It's the Nordic rune in the shape of an R that stands for movement and travel and motion.
Oh,
It's kind of a personal reminder for me to always keep going forward, always
okay.
keep up my own momentum.
I could not figure out what it was for the life of me, but
Yeah, it's a very obscure thing right there for
yeah.
sure.
Okay. So, what is your book now that you're promoting? The Sleepwater Static one?
Yes, Sleepwater Static is my 7th novel. I have the 8th is coming out in December, and this is the second book in the LGBTQ dystopian sci-fi Blue Helix series. Um, Book 1, Sleepwater Beat, was released in November of 2018, and Sleepwater Static uh, came out in just May this year, so it's still fairly new. And this book is also an international bestseller, which is very exciting. And that happened within the first 48 hours of this book's release. So I like to think that people were very excited about it after reading the first book.
Okay, so this is a part two in a series, the new one that's out?
Yes, it is, and both books were written to be read as standalones. Though the overarching, storyline, of course, does go through both books in the series, and will continue to at least a third, if not more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about genres. I bring this up with other authors, and I'm always amused at how many genres there are, and I can't keep track of all of them. Every time I have a new author on the show, I seem to be introduced to a new genre. And
Oh, good.
you just introduced me to a new one, LGBTQ Speculative Fiction.
Yes, and that's what I'm speaking about, is speculative fiction in general, which for me is mostly fantasy and sci-fi. The Blue Helix series is dystopian sci-fi, with the LGBTQ characters, and it's kind of a mashup, or I guess suppose a subgenre within both science fiction and within LGBTQ fiction.
Okay, why is it called speculative?
Speculative, those would be the genres that are not literary or nonfiction or children's books. So the made up genres, right? Speculative fiction is, you know, I guess the genre beneath just fiction. Fiction is the overarching genre, and then beneath that, there's like literary fiction, children's fiction, and speculative fiction captures fantasy, sci-fi, probably magical realism as well, I would imagine.
Where would Harry Potter fall?
I would put Harry Potter under young adult fantasy. That still would be under speculative fiction as well. And obviously fiction in the broader sense.
When somebody submits to a publisher, do you get to choose the genre or create a new one, or is it up to them?
Well, that is a good question. So I am a career indie publisher myself, and I only publish my own work, and I have also queried quite a bit to traditional agents, and there have been times where I have queried and started off putting one of my pieces into one specific genre and have gotten feedback saying that it belongs to something completely different. So with traditional publishing, the agents themselves are usually the ones who help, I suppose, categorize the pieces into whichever genre they feel fits the work the best, and that will also be the most marketable. And as an indie publisher myself, so I call all the shots. I'm in charge of everything. I do get to choose which genres my pieces fall into. So, if you're marketing something that really doesn't fall into a genre you've chosen for it, that is going to reflect in how well it sells. Because people will be getting something completely different than they expected, and sometimes that's not always the best thing.
Okay. I like to make parallels to the music industry because I am a musician, have been for my whole life.
Wonderful.
And a lot of indie musicians that I've had on the show have stated that they have no interest whatsoever in signing with a record label because of technology has turned the whole industry upside down, and it's less necessary to have a label behind you to, I hate to say become famous, but to become successful in the industry, in the business. Okay. You can put all your stuff out yourself. You can promote on social media. You can do it all. And the necessity of a label is less important than it used to be. Is that true for authors as well? I mean, before the internet and the technology, there was no such thing as self-publishing, was there?
Right.
So now... yeah. So what do you think?
Oh, I think it is very much the same in both industries. So that's a great parallel. There are far more authors than I think most people realize who are doing very well as indie publishers and as indie authors and running their own businesses and supporting themselves on what they make from their fiction. And I think, yes, with the invention of the internet and being able to do everything on our own and connect authentically as authors with readers, and build a brand for ourselves, that has become a lot easier. So, if you're signing with one of the big 5 publishers, that does bring a lot of clout to whatever book they may have taken on from you, and you're using their brand. And then also, what goes along with that is that authors really may not have nearly as much input on the final book, the final product that gets sent out there to readers as maybe they want. I've heard a few traditionally published authors say that, and there are also a lot of authors who we call them hybrid authors who have been traditionally published and who also operate within the indie publishing sphere as well. So they do a little bit of both. But yeah, I definitely think there's a huge shift still happening within the publishing industry and fiction in particular, where if, just like with anything, especially anything as a creator that people want to do, as long as you stick with it and, as long as you can, I guess, commit to being in it for the long haul, because it is a long-term endeavor, that there is so much potential and room and possibility for success. And I've only managed to grab onto a little bit of that in comparison to what I know is possible. And I'm a lot farther in my career now than I was, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago when I started. But it's almost infinite possibilities, I think, at this point.
Well, here's another comparison between authors publishing and the music industry. Mm-hmm. The one area that the major labels have over the indies is the distribution and the advertising. A major label can get your song on the front page of the iTunes website. Mm-hmm. You're going to be hard-pressed to do that as an indie. Mm-hmm. Do the major publishing houses have that same sort of ability with your book that you wouldn't have?
In some ways, I'm sure they do. I know a lot of the times, the books that are on the big display tables in front of huge bookstores like Barnes & Noble, for instance, they're there because traditional publishers, big publishing companies, have the resources to sort of buy that space, I suppose. Right. Okay. This is my understanding of it. Again, I have not worked with traditional publishers, so I can't say for sure. But there's, and definitely with bigger, more established businesses that have been around a long time and who have signed, hundreds of thousands of books and authors, there's a lot more. There's a lot more they can put into it, resources-wise, than, say, an author who's just starting out with their indie career. I am at a point in my own career now where I'm kind of doing everything all at once, and it all lifts up at the same time. So the more I write, the more I work with my clients, the more books I publish of my own, the more revenue I bring in, and the more I'm able to put back into my business. It's just like with anything else. So I would say, to start off, yes, traditional publishing companies definitely have a much greater chance of getting one of their signed authors' books into the public sphere, so to speak, or, becoming household names or on the bestsellers list. But there are plenty of indie authors and indie publishers who make the New York Times lists and the USA Today bestsellers list, and it is possible. It just takes, like I said, commitment, time, and dedication to keep going and to keep learning.
Okay. We've got about 2 minutes. Can you give us a 1-minute synopsis of your new book?
The one that's coming out in December?
Yeah.
Yes, this is The Witching Vault. It's book 1 in the Accessory to Magic series, and this is dark urban fantasy. It's basically about an apprentice witch with a criminal past who inherits a magical bank that can think for itself. And the clientele are almost as dangerous as what's inside their safety deposit boxes. There you have it.
Sounds very interesting.
Well, thank you.
My guest is Kathrin Hutson. Thank you so much for coming on this show.
Thank you for having me.
Best of luck with all your books.